Setting the stage. Carbon dioxide equivalent, or i.e. methane emissions from cows, is high enough in the world to elicit a response from the international community.
But I think that the fact that we have like almost 1 billion tons in the United States of methane from cattle itself.
Sorry, I meant to say methane emissions from cows is closer to several million tons, not 1 billion tons.
Is going to raise some concerns with the international organizations or other the powers that be that are interested in climate change. I think that that's enough of a contribution. It's going to make it's going to cause some policies to come about. And like for example, in the Netherlands, this just happened a while ago. They told their farmers they need to reduce their cattle production by 30% in that country, and that's a small country, but I mean it's starting there. That's where it's starting out to be, and
Yeah, but what happened there though?
Well, the farmers they revolted and they rebelled and they had strikes and stuff I think going on.
Yeah,
they didn't really like that idea.
Well, you talk about taking away 30% of your business. That's significant. That's really, really hard to do like overnight. So, and again, I'm not sure how much it's going to amount to. I mean, I think again we need to look into this because we are over budget with our methane. We're a little over budget, but we're not like 30% over budget. So I think we need to be careful on how we manage this. We should manage.
Issue number 1. Even though the Earth and man produce a lot of methane, the Earth has found a way to take care and eliminate most of it. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything to reduce man-made methane emissions.
But let me tell you something else. The methane situation, according to some global warming studies, is that yes, there's a lot of methane producers. There's when the oil and gas industry that not refineries, but actual extraction of oil and gas produces a lot of methane. Same with agriculture. Same with other natural sources, burning. Material, fires, and things.
I think a lot of methane is produced kind of more by nature. Like you said, some of it's from swamps. It comes from
a lot of swamps.
It'll come from the Arctic as the permafrost melts, and you have methyl hydrates in the ocean, and you have the rainforest coming down and burning down, and the clearing of the land that produces.
But that's what they estimate that to be around 558 million tons of methane, which is a lot. Mm. On the other hand, though, according to the study, there is about 548 million tons of natural sinks in the earth that scrub. Most of that's in the atmosphere that scrub the methane. So therefore, they break it down. And like we said, it breaks down in about 10 years because of that. So that's a lot quicker of a thing. So methane, if it's an almost equal sinks to production of methane, it seems to me that it's we could do a little bit better, but I don't think it's an emergency problem like maybe that we're touting it to be so much right now. So I think that, but doesn't mean we don't do anything. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try to reduce those because we are a little bit over our budget for methane, not by tons, but maybe by a few percentage points. So we should probably look into that. Just like when we're talking about the man-made contribution of greenhouse gases is it's very small in comparison to the Earth's greenhouse gas it produces, but we're adding to that, and what the Earth can't quite handle it. So we need to still, even though we're a small percentage of that, we need to reduce our percentage because it's still over the budget that the Earth has. So that's why that's why greenhouse gases keep getting trapped up in the atmosphere. So.
Issue number 2. What is the percent contribution of GHG equivalent emissions that come from cattle meat and dairy production in the United States?
What percentage, by the way, do they say that cows contribute to our man-made greenhouse gases?
For each gallon of milk, it's about 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. They estimate that we produce carbon dioxide equivalents, and for the meat, it's about 25 or a little bit higher. So when you add those all up together, they're about around 800 billion pounds of carbon dioxide equivalents, which is I think is around like 750 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. I'll break it up into 3 areas. So just the emissions from the cows, just the methane emissions, is around 4% of all the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. It's around 4%. when you take into consideration the feed that you have to give the cattle, raising the crops for it, all the machinery, all the greenhouse gases you do in doing that, and housing the cattle, that's another 4%. So that goes up to 8%. And then when you convert those products into meat products and milk kind of dairy ones, and all the transportation and putting them in stores and the refrigeration for it, that's another 4%. So they estimate it to be
about 12.
About 12%.
Okay, I've heard that similar numbers.
Issue number 3. Because of double counting and scope of LCA studies, the reported numbers and accuracy of GHG emissions from cattle are usually higher than what they should be.
So I was telling you that UC Davis in California. They do a lot of climate change studies as well. But one of the professors is saying, hey, you need to lay off the beef industry because you guys are doing a little bit of numbers game here and things. And so the 12% I've heard actually on the EPA puts all of agriculture at about 11% of the U.S. man-made emissions for greenhouse gases. So, and then the UN puts agriculture at 18%, and you say 12, and for cows, and so you get a lot of these numbers that are different. And what this professor was saying was that those numbers are based on what you just described, life cycle analysis of all of the greenhouse gases they can produce. From production of feed all the way through butchering and transportation and storage and all that stuff. That's where they get the 12 to 18% number, or 11 to 18%, whatever. So, but he's saying that in comparison, though, they put up the same number for, say, the transportation industry, which is, say, around 27, 28%, they say. But they're saying that they're only counting the exhaust emissions from transportation, not the life cycle analysis of production, manufacturing,
vehicles and all that stuff.
Yeah, so they're not comparing apples to apples there. Number one, it would not be a total of 12 to 18% if they actually did a equal comparison across the board. So that's number one problem. And then, like you're saying, we see all these different numbers everywhere. So I don't know that anybody really has an accurate estimate on really what they produce, because we seem to have these numbers all over the boards. You even saw an 80% number at one time, right? I mean,
I think it was by Forbes, or it was some news article I was reading. They say it goes up to like about 85% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States is from the cattle, from the cattle industry, which I don't know. I think it's a little inflated. I think that's the problem with a lot of these life cycle assessment studies, is they kind of double count things or triple count things, and it's in a lot of different studies. So that's why it's so elevated. I think those numbers would be. But
right.
Issue number 4. The amount of GHG emissions that are required to make a cheeseburger are at least 4% of the total U.S. GHG emissions.
There's one that talks about how, the process, the life cycle assessment of making a cheeseburger. So actually this guy did a study on it, and there's a video on it. You can look it up on YouTube or Vimeo or something. And he estimates that actually 4% of all the greenhouse gas emissions in the country can be attributed to making a cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's not just but
that's a lot of double counting there. That's a lot of
it kind of is. Yeah, it kind of is a lot of double counting.
Overlap there.
But the point being is that the cheeseburger not only has the beef part of it, it's got the buns, the cheese, the lettuce, tomatoes. You got all those parts, which you grow, and you have to transport it to all these different restaurants in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these fast food restaurants, using all that fossil fuels to get it there, and then the refrigeration and all that electricity to store all those stuff to make those cheeseburgers. So
Frank's conclusion: all of agriculture is probably 12% of all U.S. GHG emissions, and all the food and cow production falls within this amount.
Well, you just described the whole process of the agricultural industry. To me, I think, again, go back to those numbers that we don't really know how accurate they are, but if you look at the EPA numbers, they say all of the agricultural industry contributes to about 11 to 12% of the greenhouse gas. And I think that's probably a more accurate number. I mean, I don't know how accurate it really is, but taking into account all of what you just said, the wheat production, the corn and for the feed, the cows themselves, and transportation of all that, making of the cheese, and so and the lettuce and all. So that's all part of agriculture, and I think that number 12% to me is what they claim in the EPA as being all part of that 12% greenhouse gas emissions. So anyway, all right. So thank you for joining us in this episode. We'll bid you adieu, and until next time, we're the Climate Change Brothers.